You know, there's something profoundly powerful about silence. In a world that never stops talking, where every thought is broadcasted across social media, where opinions fly faster than facts, the ability to hold your tongue has become almost revolutionary. Bill Clinton once said, "When people are telling you what they think, you should listen. If you're doing all the talking, you're not learning anything." And isn't that the truth? But today, we're going deeper than just listening. We're talking about those critical moments when a truly wise soul knows not just to listen, but to remain completely silent and never, ever laugh. Before we dive into these three situations, I want you to think about the last time you laughed at something you probably shouldn't have. Maybe it was a nervous reaction. Maybe it was because everyone else was doing it. Or maybe you didn't even realize the weight of the moment until later. We've all been there. But the difference between an ordinary person and someone with genuine wisdom is the ability to recognize these moments before they happen and choose silence over sound, composure over carelessness. The first situation where a wise soul stays silent and never laughs is when someone is sharing their pain, their struggles, or their deepest vulnerabilities with you. This might seem obvious at first, but you'd be surprised how often people get this wrong. Picture this. Someone is opening up to you about their failures, their fears, their heartbreak. They're standing there emotionally naked, trusting you with pieces of themselves they don't show to just anyone. And what do some people do? They laugh. Not always out of malice, mind you. Sometimes it's nervousness. Sometimes it's discomfort with heavy emotions. Sometimes they're trying to lighten the mood or make a joke to ease the tension. But here's what they don't understand. In that moment, laughter is a knife. Bill Clinton understood the power of empathy in a way that few politicians ever have. He once reflected, "I learned a lot from the stories of people I met. Every encounter taught me that behind every face is a story, and every story matters." When someone shares their pain with you, they're not looking for comic relief. They're not asking you to fix it with humor. They're asking you to witness their humanity. They're saying, without words, "I trust you enough to show you this broken part of me." And when you laugh, even innocently, what they hear is, "Your pain doesn't matter. Your struggle is amusing to me. You were wrong to trust me." The wise soul understands this instinctively. They know that silence in these moments isn't empty or awkward. It's sacred. It's the container that holds someone else's truth without trying to reshape it, minimize it, or deflect from it. When you stay silent and present, you're saying, "I see you. I'm here. Your pain is valid, and I'm not going anywhere." That kind of presence is rare and precious in our world. Think about the people who've made the biggest impact in your life during your darkest moments. Were they the ones who tried to make you laugh it off? Or were they the ones who sat with you in the darkness, saying little but feeling everything alongside you? The wise soul doesn't fear the weight of someone else's emotions. They don't scramble to fill the space with words or laughter. They simply hold space, and in doing so, they become a sanctuary for someone who desperately needs one. Now, some of you might be thinking, but what if I'm just trying to help them feel better? What if humor is my way of showing them it's not so bad? Here's the hard truth. In those moments, it's not about what makes you comfortable. It's about what the other person needs. And what they need is validation, not deflection. They need to know their feelings are legitimate, not laughable. Bill Clinton once spoke about the importance of truly connecting with people. "We all do better when we work together. Our differences do matter, but our common humanity matters more." When someone shares their pain, they're extending their common humanity to you. Honor it with the gravity it deserves. The second situation where a wise soul stays silent and never laughs is when others are being mocked, ridiculed, or torn down in conversation. This is where things get really interesting, because this is where we see someone's true character. It's easy to be kind when kindness costs you nothing. It's harder to refuse to participate in cruelty when participation would make you fit in, make you part of the group, make you one of the gang. How many times have you been in a conversation where people start tearing someone else down? Maybe it's a coworker who isn't there to defend themselves. Maybe it's a public figure everyone loves to hate. Maybe it's someone who made a mistake that's become public knowledge. And suddenly, everyone's piling on. The jokes start flying. The laughter gets louder. And there's this unspoken pressure. Laugh along, or be seen as uptight, humorless, or worse, as if you're defending the person being attacked. The wise soul recognizes this moment for what it is, a test of integrity. Bill Clinton, reflecting on his time in public service, said, "If you live long enough, you'll make mistakes. But if you learn from them, you'll be a better person." Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has flaws. Everyone has moments they're not proud of. And yes, sometimes public figures and even people in our own lives do things that deserve criticism. But there's a vast difference between thoughtful critique and gleeful mockery. There's a canyon between holding someone accountable and treating their downfall as entertainment. When you stay silent in these moments, you're not necessarily defending the person being attacked. You're defending something more important: human dignity. You're drawing a line and saying, without words, "I will not participate in this." And here's what's powerful about that. Your silence speaks louder than any laugh could. People notice. They might not say anything in the moment, but they register it. They think, that person didn't join in. That person held themselves differently. And let me tell you something else. The person being mocked might hear about it later. Word travels. And when they find out that you didn't laugh, that you stayed silent, that you refused to join the crowd in their mockery, you become someone they can trust. You become someone with integrity. You become proof that not everyone is looking to profit from someone else's pain. But here's where it gets even deeper. When you refuse to laugh at someone else's expense, you're also protecting yourself. You're maintaining your own sense of self. Because every time you laugh at cruelty, every time you participate in tearing someone down, you erode a little piece of your own character. You tell yourself subtly that this behavior is acceptable, that people are disposable, that mockery is just harmless fun, and bit by bit, you become the kind of person who sees others not as whole human beings but as potential punchlines. Bill Clinton understood the complexity of public judgment. He experienced it firsthand during some of the most scrutinized moments of his presidency. He once observed, "Being president is like running a cemetery. You've got a lot of people under you and nobody's listening." Say what you will about his mistakes, and there were certainly mistakes, but he learned something profound about human nature through public failure. He learned that everyone loves to kick someone when they're down, and that true character is revealed not in success but in how we treat others during their failures. The wise soul stands apart from the mob. They don't need to participate in collective cruelty to feel connected to others. They find their connection through authenticity, through kindness, through the quiet courage of being different, when different means being decent. The third situation where a wise soul stays silent and never laughs is when someone is celebrating something that's actually destructive, harmful, or built on questionable foundations. This is perhaps the most subtle and challenging of the three because it requires discernment. It requires you to see beneath the surface of what's being celebrated and recognize what it truly represents. Let me paint a picture. Someone's bragging about how they outsmarted someone else in a business deal, how they got away with something they probably shouldn't have, how they manipulated a situation to their advantage at someone else's expense. And they're laughing. They think it's clever. They think it's something to celebrate. The room might be laughing with them. People might be congratulating them, slapping them on the back, treating them like they've accomplished something impressive. The wise soul sees through this. They recognize that what's being celebrated isn't success but exploitation. What's being laughed about isn't cleverness but cruelty. And they stay silent. They don't laugh, not because they're being self-righteous or trying to send a message, but because they genuinely cannot find humor in something that diminishes others or violates principles they hold dear. Bill Clinton spoke often about responsibility and the consequences of our choices. He said, "We cannot build our own future without helping others to build theirs." When someone celebrates success that came at the expense of others, they're violating this fundamental principle. They're saying, My advancement matters more than anyone else's well-being, and the wise soul cannot and will not celebrate that. This situation shows up in subtler ways too. Maybe someone's laughing about drinking too much again, treating their destructive relationship with alcohol as a funny anecdote rather than a concerning pattern. Maybe they're celebrating staying out all night when you know they have children at home who need them. Maybe they're bragging about an affair, treating betrayal and broken trust as an adventure rather than a tragedy in the making. In these moments, laughter is complicity. When you laugh, you're sending a message. This is fine. This is acceptable. I support this. And the wise soul knows that some things simply cannot be supported, even passively. Some celebrations are actually cries for help. Some laughter is covering pain. Some bragging is masking shame. And by staying silent, by refusing to laugh, you're quietly communicating. I see what this really is, and I cannot celebrate it with you. Now, this doesn't mean you get on a high horse and start lecturing people. That's not wisdom, that's arrogance. The wise soul doesn't need to announce their disapproval or explain why they're not joining in. They simply hold their space, maintain their standards, and let their silence speak. Because here's the thing, when you react differently than everyone else, people notice. It plants a seed. Maybe not immediately, but eventually that person might think, why didn't they laugh? Why didn't they think this was as funny as everyone else did? And that question might lead them to deeper reflection about their own choices. Bill Clinton, for all his complexity as a historical figure, understood something crucial about leadership and influence. He said, "The price of doing the same old thing is far higher than the price of change." When you stay silent in these moments, when you refuse to laugh at things that shouldn't be celebrated, you're modeling change. You're showing that there's another way to respond, another standard to hold, another path to walk. The wise soul also understands that what we laugh at reveals who we are. Humor is powerful. It connects people, relieves tension, brings joy. But it can also normalize things that should never be normal. It can make cruelty seem casual. It can make destructive behavior seem harmless. It can turn tragedy into comedy and real harm into entertainment. And once we start laughing at things that matter, we lose our ability to take them seriously when it counts. Think about the things society has laughed at over the years that we now recognize as deeply harmful. Think about how humor has been used to marginalize people, to mock suffering, to make serious issues seem trivial. The wise souls throughout history were often the ones who refused to join in the laughter. They were the ones who stayed silent when others were celebrating things that shouldn't be celebrated. And often they were criticized for it, called too serious, too sensitive, unable to take a joke. But time proved them right, didn't it? So what ties these three situations together? What's the common thread that runs through staying silent when someone shares their pain, when others are being mocked, and when destructive behavior is being celebrated? It's this. The wise soul recognizes that not every moment is an opportunity for levity. They understand that some situations demand gravity, respect, and thoughtfulness. They know that their response, their presence, their choice to laugh or stay silent has weight and consequence. Bill Clinton, reflecting on his years of public service and private struggles, once shared, "If you want to have a good life, you have to have some bad days." He understood that life is textured with both light and dark, that wisdom comes from experiencing both and learning to navigate each appropriately. The wise soul doesn't try to make everything light. They don't use laughter as a shield against discomfort or a tool to avoid authenticity. They're willing to sit in the heavy moments, to honor them, to respond to them with the seriousness they deserve. In our current culture, this kind of wisdom is increasingly rare. We live in an age of constant content, endless scrolling, viral videos, and quick reactions. Everything is played for laughs. Every serious moment becomes a meme. Every person's struggle becomes entertainment for others. We've trained ourselves to find humor in everything, to never let a moment get too heavy, to always keep things light and moving forward. But in doing so, we've lost something essential. We've lost the ability to be truly present with pain, to refuse participation in cruelty, to recognize when celebration is actually denial. The wise soul swims against this current. They're willing to be the person who doesn't laugh. They're willing to let silence hang in the air when everyone else is filling it with noise. They're willing to be different, to stand apart, to hold themselves to a different standard. And here's what's beautiful about that. In doing so, they become a refuge for others. They become the person others trust with their real feelings. They become the one people know won't join in the mockery. They become someone who can be counted on to respond to situations with authenticity rather than reflexive humor. This doesn't mean the wise soul never laughs. Far from it. True wisdom includes joy, playfulness, and appropriate humor. The wise soul laughs deeply and genuinely at things that are truly funny, at moments of shared joy, at the absurdities of life that don't come at anyone's expense. But they've developed discernment. They know the difference between humor that connects and humor that divides, between laughter that heals and laughter that harms, between lightness that's appropriate and lightness that's avoidance. Bill Clinton once said, "We are on the right track to the 21st century. We are on the right track, but our work is not finished." In many ways, this applies to our own personal development. We're on a track toward wisdom, toward becoming the kind of people who respond to life with authenticity and integrity. But the work is never finished. Every day presents new situations that test our discernment, new moments where we have to choose between joining in or standing apart, new opportunities to either laugh carelessly or stay thoughtfully silent. So, how do we develop this kind of wisdom? How do we train ourselves to recognize these three situations and respond appropriately? It starts with awareness. It starts with paying attention, not just to what's being said, but to what's beneath what's being said. When someone is talking, ask yourself, what are they really sharing? What do they need from me right now? What would my laughter communicate in this moment? It continues with developing your own internal compass, your own sense of what's right and what isn't. This requires you to think deeply about your values, about what matters to you, about what kind of person you want to be. When you know who you are and what you stand for, it becomes easier to recognize when something conflicts with that. Your silence becomes natural rather than forced because it's coming from a place of genuine alignment with your principles. And it deepens through practice and reflection. Every time you face one of these situations, you have an opportunity to choose wisely. Sometimes you'll get it right. Sometimes you'll laugh when you wish you hadn't, or stay silent when you should have spoken up. That's part of being human. But if you take the time afterward to reflect, to think about how you responded and why, to consider what you might do differently next time, you're building wisdom muscle by muscle, moment by moment. The truth is, we all want to be wise. We all want to be the kind of person others can trust, respect, and turn to in difficult moments. But wisdom isn't something you suddenly possess one day. It's something you build through thousands of small choices, through countless moments where you choose integrity over ease, authenticity over approval, silence over careless laughter. Bill Clinton's life and career, with all its triumphs and failures, teach us something important about wisdom. He said, "Character is a journey, not a destination." You're never done becoming wise. You're never finished developing discernment. Every situation is a new opportunity to either strengthen your character or compromise it, to respond with wisdom or react with carelessness. As we close, I want you to think about the people in your life who embody this kind of wisdom. Think about the ones who've stayed silent when you shared your pain, who held space for you without trying to fix you with humor. Think about the people who've never joined in when others were tearing someone down, who stood apart from the mob even when it would have been easier to join in. Think about those who've quietly refused to celebrate things that shouldn't be celebrated, who've maintained their standards even when everyone around them was lowering theirs. These people are rare, aren't they? They stand out. They're memorable, not because they're loud or flashy, but because they're solid, trustworthy, real. They're the ones you turn to when life gets hard. They're the ones whose respect actually means something because you know they don't give it lightly. They're the ones who make you want to be better simply by being in their presence. you can be that person. You can develop that wisdom. It starts with recognizing these three situations: when someone shares their pain, when others are being mocked, and when destructive behavior is being celebrated. And it continues with the simple but powerful choice to stay silent, to not laugh, to hold yourself to a higher standard. In a world that's constantly pushing us to react, to engage, to perform our responses for others, choosing silence is revolutionary. Refusing to laugh when everyone else is laughing is an act of courage. Maintaining your standards when it would be easier to lower them is the definition of integrity. So, the next time you find yourself in one of these three situations, pause, take a breath, feel the weight of the moment, and then choose wisely. Choose to be the person who stays silent. Choose to be the soul who knows that some things are simply too important, too sacred, too serious to laugh at. Choose wisdom over acceptance, integrity over approval, authenticity over ease. Because in the end, your character is built not in the moments when everyone's watching and applauding, but in the quiet moments when you choose to respond differently than everyone else, to hold yourself to a higher standard, to be truly wise.